It's fine. It's like the focus is the speaker and then oh, okay, that's great. Good question.
Sound guy.
Evening, can you hear me? Now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Our program will start in the next 10 minutes. We are just waiting for our guests to arrive. Thank you.
Is there a problem? He needs to stop. That light there that I'm looking at, that one, that's the light that needs to shine. that better?
It's still coming.
Do you want it down? Can you point down? How's that with your eyes? Look forward. Good. You can go down a bit.
No, even on that.
How's that?
Still not enough. It's
Still
better.
not? Should be better.
It's better, but it's
Because what happened now, where your camera is picking up this light, so it's looking at the sensing. See? It's sensing. That's how it's sensing the light. You see? You see it's improved.
I don't think so.
Of the RDJ Publishing team, and I will also be your Director of Ceremonies tonight. I'd like to thank all of you for making the time to come out this evening. I know it's cold, but we're excited for the public discussion titled Sustainable Aviation, Are We Ready? Please note that this is just the first in a series of discussions we hope to have, so there are more exciting things to come. I think all of you have a event program with you, and they will be displayed behind me as well. So without further ado, I'd like to call upon our next speaker, who is our Public Operations Manager, Ms. Olga Priscilla Chilombo, who will introduce to you the RDJ. Dear esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, those attending this event in person and those attending virtually, good evening and welcome. Thanks for having me tonight, and it's a privilege for me to stand here today and brief you a little bit about the RDJ team that is responsible for your presence tonight here. And before I go further, I would just like to request for the control of the presentation from my colleagues. Thank you. The RDJ Group is currently made up of 2 companies. And it's funny because I got a question just before we started this event from one of the attendants, and he said, when I look here, I see RDJ Consulting, and I see somewhere else RDJ Publishing, so what is this? So I'm here to answer if this is the same question going around your mind. So RDJ currently is made up of 2 companies, and they are called RDJ Consulting Services and RDJ Publishing. The RDJ Group main focus is, or its value is integrity, accountability, and respect in everything that we do. Allow me to distinguish between the 2 companies that I just mentioned. The RDJ Consulting, first of all, is an energy and sustainability advisory firm founded back in 2010 with the mission of making a difference in the energy and sustainability landscape. Thankfully, this mission has been gradually fulfilled with success with every project that we took since then. Our key sectors of focus are water, transport, environment, and telecommunications. Meanwhile, the RDJ Publishing is not limited to being the publishing home for RDJ Consulting that is responsible for its publications and events. The arm came to existence when we decided to publish and create more events such as this one. So this serves the purpose of the RDJ Publishing, and it has the mission of becoming the Namibian business that is centered locally with a focus globally. Its mission is to be trusted source of facts, analysis, and data in Africa for investors. Ladies and gentlemen, this slideshow shows you the team behind RDJ Publishing and RDJ Consulting, as you can see. If you're wondering what services that we provide, RDJ Consulting actually provides advisory services, just like I mentioned earlier, and conducts market studies. It does due diligence. It also provides training in areas to the company's interest as well as those of our stakeholders. Meanwhile, RDJ Publishing is here to make your publication reach a wider audience, create and host events like this ones, conduct market research, and in order to do all of this, RDJ Publishing does in-house design and its own layouts. This here, ladies and gentlemen, is the flagship publication of RDJ Publishing, which is known very well as the RDJ Briefing. So the RDJ Briefing is actually a monthly publication which is written and authored by RDJ Consulting. We have now published over 60 publications that are available online for free on electronic platforms such as Flip HTML, Issue, and Press Reader. The publication is available in very limited print copies that you have found when you came in, and it's mostly available online, like I mentioned. And now, in order to obtain a free copy, because this is actually for free, you simply have to subscribe via an email. The contacts will be provided at the end of this whole event. Now, to read all our previous editions, you can also scan the QR code that you can find in front of the cover, or you can find any of the RDJ Publishing banners and you can scan the QR code. Other publications that are still underway are, for example, the Internship Experience Yearbook. Normally we take interns every year. We have an internship program, so we normally create a book at the end of the internship. We also have the RDJ blog, which is available. The In Focus magazine, which is upcoming. We also have the Africa Infrastructure series, which is soon to be published. and our flagship magazine, the RDJ Briefing. Well, let's now get into the main story of today, which is sustainable aviation. Are you ready? May we make the best of today's discussion, and I thank you. Thank you so much, Olga. I can say personally, as part of the team, it's very exciting to be part of the RDJ. I'd like to call up next our keynote address speaker, Mr. George Matthias, who is currently the Senior Manager of the Namibia Civil Aviation Authority. Thank you.
Quite scary to be standing in front of so many people. I hope I'm going to do justice to this. Director of Ceremonies, esteemed event organizers, representative of government ministries, distinguished invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you in highlighting the sustainable aviation. But before I start, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our interim Executive Director of the Namibia Civil Aviation Authority, Captain Erickson Ngongola, for the confidence he placed in me to present the speech on his behalf. Director of Ceremonies, although unpleasant, I believe that there is no way we can start any conversation without talking about COVID. COVID-19 was catastrophic and brutal. It robbed our world of millions of people, family, friends, and colleagues. But we survived, defying predictions of bankruptcies and failures. It was a team effort, government and industries alike, that saw us through. Airlines took prudent and difficult decisions to stay afloat as revenues evaporated. For our people, it was a story of wage cuts, layoffs, reassignments, or retrenchments, but let us not forget that these actions saved hundreds of thousands of jobs. The aviation industry is now leaner, tougher, and nimbler. Latest analysis shows losses in 2021 were close to $42 billion US, a huge loss. And now it is believed that global losses will be 9.7 billion this year. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, please allow me to introduce our organization, NCAA. Who is NCAA? NCAA, the Namibia Civil Aviation Authority, is the key stakeholder responsible for safety oversight and the safe and efficient conduct of the Namibian aviation industry. The responsibility of the regulatory oversight falls into 6 key aviation safety areas: flight operations, airworthiness, personnel licensing, aerodrome and ground aids, air navigation services safety oversight, and safety promotion and quality. Of the 6 regulatory safety oversight areas, all have a part to play in sustainable aviation. Namibia is a signatory to the International Convention on International Aviation, the Chicago Convention, and as such is an ICAO member state. One of our regulatory functions is the implementation of ICAO annexes and recommended practices in our regulations. This is the Namibian Civil Aviation Regulations. In 2018, ICAO adopted the first edition of Annex 16, which is the Environmental Protection, Volume 4, Carbon Offsite and Reduction Scheme for International Aviation, COSIA, on the 27th of June 2018 and made the document publicly available on the 20th of June 2018. The content came into effect on the 1st of January 2019, whereupon all member states were required to implement and subsequently comply with these provisions. It is commendable to note that even though ICAO's COSIA provisions only were required to come into effect in 2019, Namibia's action for emission reduction was already fully developed and first published in September 2016. The NCAA, then the DCA, spearheaded the process, collaborating with other strategic partners such as the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, Air Namibia, NAMCOR, Ministry of Works and Transport, and the Namibian Airports Company for the establishment of an aviation emission working group. Within the aviation emission working group, the policies of the NCAA, NAMCOR, Ministry of Environment and Forestry and Tourism stand out in terms of their commitment to lowering Namibia's carbon footprint and reducing the impact of climate change from other bigger players in the carbon emission field. It is through this initiative that Namibia engaged in ICAO's pilot program, including voluntary participation in the first phase of ICAO's carbon offset and reduction scheme for international aviation, the COSIA. The COSIA scheme involves monitoring of international aviation players who meet certain criteria for the levels of CO2 emission they create and providing them with support to reduce their carbon footprint. The NCAA in the COSIA Action Plan focuses on 3 areas of significance. Reducing the non-direct routing through more efficient means of transport centralized around the use of performance-based navigation, i.e. GPS routings, which make transitioning through the Namibian airspace much more efficient. The use of wide area multi-role systems, called WAM radar, to improve routing efficiency. Encouraging operators to be fully aware of all fuel savings, such as the use of more efficient engine systems, reduced payload of non-essential supplies and route structures to avoid inefficient equipment use. Air Namibia was previously our COSIA applicable entity that contributed by providing the required monitoring and data needed to participate in this scheme. But Westcare presently, while falling below the 10,000 ton emission level, which is the requirement in the participation of this survey, is still actively contributing voluntarily to the CO2 emission monitoring data. Dear invited guests, the Namibia Civil Aviation Authority remains abreast of the COSIA updates by regularly updating or participating in COSIA events. And just recently, one of our senior managers from the Airworthiness Department returned from the COSIA conference this month. NCAA maintains a strong support for the future of carbon neutral or even carbon negative footprint as the answer for sustainable aviation fuel, or SAFs as they are known. With the use of SAFs, our carbon footprint from aviation enterprises can be reduced as much as 98%. Currently, only 0.1% penetration has been achieved in the market, with the International Air Transport Aviation Association, IATA, aiming for 2% by 2025. Namibia Civil Aviation Authority always has been and is still in full support and ready to approve ventures into the biofuel sector. NCAA stands ready to partner with industry in making towards a sustainable aviation future. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matuas. Our next speaker is one of our own. He is a researcher and PA at the RDJ Consulting. Mr. Junius David will come up now and give us an overview of the Namibian aviation industry. Mr. David.
Oh yes, good evening everybody. How are you? Okay, very good. My name is David Junius and I'm from RDJ. I'm a researcher and also a personal assistant to the group executive, Mr. Jared, and we have just decided to bring you this public talk which is on aviation. And as a researcher, I was doing my research or doing my work at the office, and one thing that I found out is civil aviation, and then we wanted to focus this topic only on electric aviation or aircraft. And then as soon as I was digging through the research, I found that there are particular and more sustainable aviations, which includes aircraft, hybrid and hydrogen. As you know, hydrogen is one of the hottest topics in the country right now. Okay, so let me get you through this presentation. Oh yes, as I was going through the research, and I was.
You can just stand on the assumption on that. Don't have to go through.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. I hope you can hear me now. Okay. So as I was going through the research, I started to include, starting from up now, I started to include the policies, because we cannot just adopt sustainable aviation without considering the policies. And then my team was like, David, are you always going to talk about politics and things? I'm like, no, you have to start there. If sustainable aviation is supported by the policies, then that makes it easy. And I was going through the Harambee Prosperity Plan, which shows that infrastructural development is one of the pillars that support sustainability. So I'm saying that for sustainable aviation to go through, we have to Oh, thank you. Okay, so I went through the Harambee Prosperity Plan, and it shows that in the infrastructural development pillar, it shows that for sustainable aviation to take place, we have to consider these policies which support infrastructural development. Okay, and also in the NDP5, as we know, is also one of the supporting, it's an implementation plan of the Harambee Prosperity Plan. And so I was going through and I came across this table which shows greenhouse reduction emissions by 30%. And as you can see through the years, it has been increasing. And these are the projections that the NDP5 wants to realize in the next years until the NDP5 is over, which is phasing out this year. And as you can see, the reductions are projected to be at least increasing by 1,000 from every year, from every phase. And these are the things that used to scare me when I was young. When I used to hear of greenhouse emissions, they used to tell us, I remember I was in grade 3 or something there, they used to tell us, okay, there's an ozone layer, and if we are producing much of these greenhouse emissions, they can disturb this ozone layer. And this was scary to me, but it's still scary to me. So what we are advising is we want sustainable aviation not to produce greenhouse emissions which are produced by aircrafts such as oil-fueled aircraft. So shifting the aircrafts to sustainable aircrafts such as hydrogen fuel, then this will reduce the greenhouse emissions. And they're saying that the effects of greenhouse emissions, they have an effect on African continent. It's the driest, and Namibia also is the most prone continent to climate change. And people are saying also that Namibia or Africa is not the most prone to green hydrogen, and they are saying is the polars, the cold continents, such as the North Pole and the South Pole. But I believe Africa is one of the most prone to climate change. Okay, and let me take you also through the overview of the role players in the aviation industry. We have the Ministry regulation body, and coming to the national airports, and also the NCAA, which was here already, the National Aviation Authority, and these are they provide safety in the aviation sector. And we also have some role players that are now doing the regional flights, such as Fly Namibia and West Air, because you know the absence of Namibia at the moment. And we also have NAPA. NAPA is it's a community of practice for people in the aviation industry. Community of practice, I mean, it's an industry where people in the same field of study or in a similar field of profession, they can come along, they can discuss, so to say, like an association. This helps to better that aviation industry. And this will consist of pilots, mechanics in the aircraft mechanics, and so on. Okay, we also have aviation schools, we have signal, and we have cabin crew. These are just some examples of role players in the aviation industry, and we hope that these are enough to push the aviation industry and also to shift it to the side of sustainability. Okay, these are some of the important factors we took from the COSIA, and I want to focus here on mostly the registered aircrafts in the country. We have round about 268 helicopters, 69 rotorcraft, small airplanes which are 5,700 kg, there are 343. We have 55 large aeroplanes. And coming to the aerodromes, my friend was joking about, when he hears about aerodromes, he relates it to the Russian invasion on Ukraine, because they are using these aerodromes to go into Russia and this. And then I'm like, okay, is that your interest for coming here? You know, it's like, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, so the active pilots, we have 213 pilots in the country, of which we only have 191 males and 12 are females, sorry. So we are also trying to make the aviation industry inclusive, so that all genders are represented. Okay, so those are just the key factors, but mostly I focus on, we want to include mostly both genders in the aviation industry, because it's mostly male dominated. Yes, and also as initiative to reduce carbon emissions, we have the Aviation Emissions Working Group, the AEWG. This is the controlling body that is regulating the carbon emissions in the aviation industry. And Namibia was also part of this, but you see it's not there anymore. But this body is represented by the NCAA and the Ministry of Works and Transport. Also the Ministry of Tourism. Tourism falls into aviation because we have these shorter flights, the domestic flights, and also the tourist attractions as you find in Namibia, they are mostly isolated. So sometimes people use helicopters and they are just small planes to land at these aviation, at these tourist attractions through aviation mode of transport. Okay, NAMCO is also part of this group, as they are the controlling body for custodian for petroleum in the country. So it's just to reduce the emission. So such groups are needed not only in the aviation industry, but also in all areas. So we don't just want sustainability to be practiced in transport or wherever, but you want this to be inclusive, starting from, because when you talk about sustainability, you only focus it on electronic motors and all the things, but we want to make it inclusive. That's the only way we can achieve inclusive sustainability. Oh yes, and that is the end of my presentation. I also want to leave you with this. When President John F. Kennedy in 1961, when he emphasized his dream to the Americans that he wanted to go to the moon, and people took it as a joke. As we are introducing now this sustainable aviation, we might say, is Namibia ready? We have seen these infrastructures, we have seen the number of the roads and the women in it, the mechanics, are they really enough? But this can be sounding ambitious, but so to say, I believe Namibia is ready, we have enough infrastructures, and I take this motivation from John F. Kennedy just after 9 years when he introduced when he put it out there to the public that he wants America to go to the moon. Just after 9 years, they did so with NASA. So what I'm leaving you with is, it's just a few times the world can see us doing really good in sustainable aviation and taking good credit from the green hydrogen, which is also one of the hottest topics in the country. And yes, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. So moving on from one David to the next David, our next speaker is Mr. David Jarrett, our group executive, aka the big boss, and he will give us an introduction on sustainable international aviation. He will go into detail on sustainable aviation fuels, and finally, what's next for Namibia.
Thank you, Kina, and I suppose in this official case, I'm supposed to say Miss Ndongo. Thank you very much. The real big boss is somewhere at the back there. I'm sure she'll be upset if she finds out that I think I'm the boss, but there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to let you know, before I move on to the aviation topic, you've had the introduction of the group, and you've had a brief, what I call a brief introduction of the Namibian Aviation Industry. And Ms. Latrice, thank you very much for the Namibian Civil Aviation Authority's involvement. As one of the things I will make very clear, we are not endorsed by them in any way, shape or form, but their presence speaks volumes as far as I'm concerned in having that. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of the Lufthansa Group representative. I hope I said that right. Dominic, so welcome. And in terms of also the Director of Energy, thank you, sir. I know you're sitting at the back and you wanted to slide in quietly and so on. And a few other representatives that, of course, I know from the various sectors, particularly the renewable energy industry and so on. The other thing that I'd like to point out to you in going forward is that, David, well done. I could tell that nervousness was taking you all over the place, but part of what we do at RDJ Group, which was mentioned previously by Olga, sorry, again, it's Priscilla. Sorry, we get this familiarity at the office and then it pervades itself into the public sphere, right? One of the things that we do is we give the youngsters an opportunity to develop themselves, and we try and correct where we can and so forth. And so what I wanted to say, David, you'll get over this nervousness. I've had 40 years to do it, so I'm sure you have another 39 to go. So that will definitely help you. Now, on to the real reason why we're here, which is sustainable aviation. I'd like to start first and foremost. So, I'm going to start off tonight with the astounding headlines, worse than expected, and at the same time, pointing to some figures. So you'll notice that when you talk about the amount of emissions based, and I think this is based on 2018 figures, but please don't crucify me if it's some other year. that aviation only accounted for 2.5% of all global emissions. So you can see that even if you had a 50% reduction, for example, and I'm saying it in this context, you would only be moving 1%, roughly, or 1.25% for those who had maths classes, from the amount of emissions globally that we're putting out. And you can see that that would be a Herculean task, because those of you that understand from a statistical perspective, in most cases, you're lucky if you get 3 to 5% efficiencies over maybe a 1 to 5 year period in trying to do some things. Now, there are other actions that can take place that can give us greater gains, but we have to understand that our real remit here, and so I'm speaking from an RDJ Group perspective, is really an awareness-raising exercise. This is not one where we're defending one thing or the other, or eliminating anything. But we're here just saying, let's raise the awareness, because the general public is not aware that some things exist, and some things still seem like they're movie characters. And David was mentioning John F. Kennedy, so for those of us that are old enough, yes, I wasn't born when John F. Kennedy was around, but still, in terms of, there used to be a comic book called Dick Tracy, and one of the things that Dick Tracy used to do, and this is a comic book that came back from I think the 40s or the 50s, but for those of us old enough, those comic books were still around when we were growing up. And one of the things that Dick Tracy used to do, he used to use a watch, and there was a TV screen on his watch, and I mean, it was like one of the most ridiculous things. And I'm sure if I throw a stone, there's probably an Apple Watch somewhere in this room. So you get the point that I'm trying to make, that if we do, and I'm trying to follow up on David's point, which coincidentally he didn't mention to me before, and I heard it, and it is a good point, that every journey is made with the first step. So here we are tonight discussing what the first step could look like. And so, ladies and gentlemen, go with me on this journey. So, one of the things that is pointed out by the information that we have is that the cirrus clouds, or the clouds above us, when the planes fly through, that it contributes possibly up to 5% of the global radiation balance. And so it is from that perspective that the type of fuel used in the atmosphere would be something of a concern. But I still take you back to the fact that it's 2.5% of total emissions globally. So this is something that we just need to. So this is said in that context. So as mentioned to you by the Civil Aviation Authority, Namibia is party to what is known as the CORSIA. And what the CORSIA does is, it takes aviation, or what I would say airline operators, if we can say it that way, through a series of logic gates. And a series of questions are asked, and if answered in the yes, you move to the next stage. If answered in the no, then the step stops there. And so, as was mentioned, 10,000 tons is the limit or the gate that is generally used if you want to use a general yardstick. And unfortunately for Namibia, we have now, as in terms of registered aircraft in Namibia, it is my understanding that most of our aircraft are below it. But here's the funny thing. It's good news for us. And good news, I'll tell you why I say it's good news. In that the information I'll present to you based on our research shows that currently the technologies that will allow sustainable aviation do best in the smaller aircraft at the moment and lower passenger numbers. And we will show you that this evening. Thank you. So, the world around us is changing, and the large players are already eyeing sustainable aviation. Now, I must say that one of the areas that we've noticed also is that where the larger aircraft are concerned, the push is for sustainable aviation fuels. And sustainable aviation fuels will be defined a little bit later on in this presentation. Now, what that means then is that they are focused on a specific category while at the same time there is the possibility of utilization of hydrogen and the utilization of electricity. The airline industry itself, and particularly through the Transport Association, I think it's called IATA. For those of you that have had old-time airplane tickets, you'll have remembered IATA's logo stamped all over it. And so what they're saying is that electric aircraft may be possible from the mid-2030s. So from 2030 onwards, we're looking at it, but there's a major technical breakthrough that they will be small regional aircraft flying short local routes. Hydrogen looks more promising, but comes with a number of challenges that are unlikely to be resolved in time to have a significant impact on what is known as net zero. And net zero, I think if I stand corrected, is for 2050, is net zero within the industry. Now, what is happening therefore is that you have players like United Airlines, you have Alaska Air Group, you have GOL from Brazil, and you have Norwegian Airlines, and of course Rolls-Royce, the equipment manufacturer. So you have some of the original equipment manufacturers and so forth getting involved in the process. And once you get the manufacturers being involved and taking it seriously, I can tell you that it is a good move forward, and it is something that a train that's left the station as far as I'm concerned. Now, the IATA strategy for net zero looks to use, and this is what I was trying to introduce to you earlier, looks to use 65% of all energy utilized by the industry by 2050 to come from sustainable aviation fuels. So these are your biofuels, I suppose reformed fuels and those sort of fuels that can be still used in what could be classed as traditional combustion or jet engines. You will then have 19% coming from offset or carbon capture systems, and that will account for that. And then 13% will come from what we call the new energy. So there's a lot of focus on electricity and hydrogen as a form of energy for motion. But the transport industry itself, or the aviation transport industry, if I can say that correctly, is only looking at 13% of that being covered by those new fuels. And do not underestimate this, because 1 gigaton is currently being produced in terms of the emissions. And so 13% will be eliminated by electricity and hydrogen. And personally, I feel that this could be much deeper, depending on how the commercial aspects look at it. So here are some points that we have to consider when we talk about sustainability. We have to consider the range of the aircraft. So if you notice from the previous set of slides, that we're talking about the fact that we're looking at local aircraft and not long-haul aircraft that will be using some of the new fuels. You also look at the number of passengers that you need to move from point A to point B and vice versa. You need to look at the flight time. So how long will the aircraft be in the air? So currently it is estimated that you can have aircraft that are running on electric systems, for example, doing up to 3-hour flights. And you can have aircraft that are running on hydrogen, running, I think it's estimated somewhere around 5 to 6 hours currently, because you're using that storage fuel. In terms of the power rating, so how powerful does this aircraft have to be? So for example, and I'm not a pilot or anything, so please do not take anything I said as Bible in terms of what it is. But if you have an aircraft that's just moving 2 people, for example, from Windhoek to a lodge somewhere, that'll be different from when you have an airplane that has to move 10 people and all their baggage, for example. So the weight limits on that would be a lot different. And then last but not least, as I pointed out earlier to you, the fuel source will be come into. So there are 5 key components that they say come into the mix when you discuss sustainable aviation. And so, for those of us in the renewable energy business, we are quite familiar with these sorts of diagrams. And what it does is it maps out, when you look at, for example, the amount of emissions that can come from the operation, and you can see the fact that when you talk about battery electric operations, and please let's not get into the discussion about where the electricity came from, but when you look about battery electricity operations, the emissions should be literally nearly zero. Now, if you look at conventional fuel, then you will be having a lot of emissions in comparison. So this is not to say that it's dirty. And of course, you can have hybrids in between, and of course, hydrogen combustion would feature the lower carbon emissions. Now, this table, I want you to pay close attention to. So class, are you listening? Sorry. It is one of those bad habits I have as a lecturer. So you can notice, in terms of the timeline, they're saying since 2020, single passenger aircraft in electricity, full electric aircraft, are available in terms of development, and they're ready for single passenger. And that's the point I was making earlier. So if one of us in here can decide on buying an aircraft just for us to fly away somewhere, we can do up to 140 kilometers. That same process has improved to 3 passengers since 2021, and the range has improved from 140 kilometers to 300 kilometers. So previously you could get yourself to Riobos or to Okahania. Sorry, I didn't want my wife to be upset, so I mentioned Riobos first. You could do that. Now you could possibly get yourself to Otjiwarongo. And I do remember the Honourable Governor mentioning that they want to fix the aerodrome there. So you could get yourself with a full electric aircraft from Windhoek to Otjiwarongo. That is possible. And also in terms of a hybrid electric aircraft, you could get yourself to Kribfontein as of 2021. Now, as of 2024, it is expected that you'll be able to move 6 passengers electrically over a distance of up to 250 kilometers. And if by 2025 you wanted to do 19 passengers, you should be able to do 1,000 kilometers with a hybrid aircraft, or fully electric, you can move 9 passengers over 800 kilometers by 2025. And please bear in mind, 2025 is just around the corner, so that's not a major jump. So if we take the political timelines of 2030, 2050, and so on, by 2030, it is expected that you can have 186 passengers on a fully electric aircraft traveling 1,200 kilometers. And for us in Namibia, that would be a real game changer in terms of the distances, the ability for us to move large distances sustainably with fuel that we could most likely produce by then. And see, I'm touting for you, Director, that by then we're fully sustainable. And at the same time, you can move 70 passengers up to 1,500 kilometers, which means, if my memory serves me right, that could get us to Johannesburg in a hybrid aircraft by 2030. So which means the dependency, and this is another area that I'd like to take us, the dependency on imported fuel would be reduced, seriously reduced, while not reducing our economic movements in terms of what we could do and how we would get there. Another area that's not given a lot of attention is ground transportation. So here we have a fully electric, what is called aircraft refueling transporter, that although it is moving aviation fuel, the transporter itself is not using fossil fuels. So even that is starting to add to the reductions, and that's what I was talking about, like 2%, 3%. So we can start to get that. And in terms of the type of vehicles that are available to start to do ground handling transportation, electricity is already one of the areas that can be utilized. And for those that are in the airport operations, I'm not stepping on your toes when I do this, but if you understand how equipment moves at an airport, it goes and it does a specific task, and then it comes back to a ground handling point where it can be recharged. So there are some issues And I'm not saying it's a perfect world and everything is just hunky-dory, just swap one for the other, because there are other challenges that I will mention coming forward. But it means that there are opportunities, and it's the opportunities that I'm trying to impress on you. So sustainable aviation fuels. Remember that little chart, kids? Yeah. I'm just joking. So we did have the sustainable aviation fuels, which would be more like a traditional fuel, but more sustainably created and composed. And it is said that that is actually jet fuel. So SAF for short is actually jet fuel, and it's the same as Jet A, and I'm sounding like I'm intelligent now. Jet A and Jet A1. So this is the type of aviation fuel that the real aviators use. So we're not talking about those with the little petrol engines and so on. And what it is saying is that they can use various feedstocks. So there's oil from various plants that can be utilized for this sustainable aviation. There's algae, there's greases, there's fats. Yeah, I've got to lose some weight. And waste streams and also alcohol. So, I mean, no offense, but when we had the alcohol ban during the COVID, it was mentioned. We could have taken some of that and made fuel in the meantime. Another crop of wine was coming. Don't talk about my wine cellar. I mean, another crop of wine was coming the following year, so we could have used, instead of complaining, we could have been doing something else with that wine. But please don't touch my wine. Okay. So, and of course we can have those sort of mixes. So sustainable aviation fuel is possible now, and so I think it's really what we call the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, that some of this will lie with to ensure that we have equipment that can use the fuel. And I think it's also for a value chain to be created. And one of the philosophies that I believe in, if there is a market, there will always be a seller. There will always be a seller, as long as there's a market for them to buy. There's somebody willing to buy on that. So, one of the things that they've also shown from their studies is 1 ton of non-recyclable plastic inserted into an eco-plant comes out with 7% fuel oil, 52% what is called diesel or ENI, and these are the standards for the type of diesel, 75 litres of fuel oil, and 172 kilogram of carbon black. So the carbon black itself can be utilized, for example, for tar and roads and that sort of stuff. That's my understanding. And of course there's naphtha. And naphtha is also an ultra-low sulfur naphtha. And naphtha sometimes is used with, for example, Roads Authority looking at low volume sealed roads and so on. That's my understanding as well. So you can see there's quite a bit of things that could come from our recycle process. And by the way, next month in our magazine, recycling will feature. So this just might be on the topic. So have they started already using it? Yes. So on February 9th, I wasn't there, but February 9th, 2021, KLM powered one of their aircraft from Amsterdam to Madrid. So I wasn't talking about from Windhoek to Okahandja. Amsterdam to Madrid. And as far as I know, the plane arrived safely, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it. So I'm just trying to impress on you, this is not one of these science version things, this is a reality in terms of what has been done. And of course, you can see that there's a collaboration between the Dutch government and the air operator. Okay? Now, in terms of hybrid aviation, so hybrid aviation is basically the mix of current fuels and new fuels, and that's basically how they say that runs. And NASA, now, David, thank you again. You opened the door for me so I can walk through it. JFK, 9 years. They went to the moon. Now they said they're going to give you a hybrid aircraft. Do you really think they can give it to you? They gave you, look, they sent you to the moon. And I know people say they were in Nevada and they lied and it was TVs, but they went to the moon. That's what I think. So I think they can get us from Amsterdam to Madrid via hybrid. I also think they can do that. And possibly knowing these guys, they want to take us from LA to New York or something like that. But they started collaborating on hybrid electric aircraft. And I think that the hybrid aviation may be one of the first major stops that could be used. And if we look at Namibia in particular, and I'm coming back to our circumstances, if we look at Namibia in particular, where we have our green schemes that are really for us to be independent in terms of feeding ourselves, we don't really want to be doing biofuels from some of these areas. We would want to concentrate on humans first, and therefore hybrid aviation, and the fact that we found oil, so hybrid, and Harold's electricity from renewables, and Paul's, sorry, I'm not disrespecting you guys, we could combine, and so this is possible. And there are actually aircraft that are hybrid. So here is one currently. And so you will get the presentation, by the way. As long as you've left an email address or something, you will get the presentation so you'll be able to see. And so there are developing that. And of course, one of the things that I must say, and this is a very personal statement, is that because of the amount of money required, because of how the systems are set up, for us to do research and development, and when I say us, I'm talking about everybody in humanity, not us, but humanity. These are some of the roadblocks to getting the development. If there is no commercial, and as I said, if there is no market, you tend to find that there is very limited approach for some of the things. But for those who are launching into it, this is what the aircrafts of the future will look like. And I understand that this one is already existing by EAG. It's a British group. So they are getting ready to go into mass production, they said by 2025 or 2026, something like that. Now, I don't have all the figures here, and as I said, we're not representing any aircraft manufacturer or anybody else, we're just looking at the research and saying, look, it's out there. So where can we go next as a country in terms of making ourselves independent, making ourselves sustainable, and moving to the next stage? These are the sort of equipment that's out there currently. And what this one does is it uses electric motors driven by two sources. So you have the direct battery drive, which will take it on the runway and get it into the air. And then for its flight, it will switch to fuel, whatever that fuel is. And then for landing, during the landing period, it will go back to electric. And so you get this reduction in overall fuel consumption. And for those who understand piloting and whatever it may take to get an aircraft into the air safely and through its flight and land it again on the other end, I understand there are certain safety margins, and I understand that this type of aircraft actually speaks to that, in the sense that it can use, for example, its descent when it's coming down. It can convert that using the same motors, do it in reverse or whatever it is, however it works, that they can convert that energy and store it in the batteries, kind of like hybrid cars, I understand, when you're braking. And they can use that so they can actually extend their flight time while they're still in the air, if they use that sort of procedure. So, here we get to the one that's, when it's mentioned, it reminds me of when those of us, Harold included, Paulus, I can't remember seeing you then because you're a youngster, but those of us in the old guard were talking about having solar on roofs and so on. And yes, John, I mean, I know you went through it too, where we all were told it's foolishness. The last time I saw a solar panel, it was in a camp, and those lights didn't work well. And now we have 20 megawatts just been inaugurated last week in Omaruru. We have, I think, 24 solar plants, major solar plants, countrywide, if not more, and there are hundreds of rooftop solars across the country that are producing electricity and energy into the system. And by last calculation, somewhere in the 14 or 15% of the energy consumed last year, or the last reporting period, in terms of electricity in Namibia, came from solar and or renewable generation. So it shows that it is starting to make inroads. So we came from 0 to 15 in roughly 15 years, somewhere there around. Against all odds. Thank you. Yeah. So batteries included. So electric aviation, and this was put there as a joke, but even though I put it there as a joke, I wanted to emphasize the fact that there are some things we look at as toys, but they actually are known as models. And if you've ever had a discussion with an engineer or even financial analyst, they will tell you they develop models first to show them what they can do in the real world. Yeah, so batteries included. So it is expected that non-electrically propelled aircraft development, you can see that it started off basically as something about urban. And one of the things that we picked up from our research is that quite a bit of the electric aviation started with like drone technology and kind of like toys for the rich. And so people don't take it that seriously, like, you gotta have money to do this. But it's slowly becoming pervasive in normal life. And you can see that by 2019, you can see that there were some 215 different designs that were available and in development. So it shows that. And if you look at the very top, the dark blue, where the last one for 2019, you will see that large commercial aircraft have started to show up as electric aircraft. And so I just want to point to you, and I can tell you now, nobody would have done that if there was not the possibility of making money. And you can see that urban air mobility is seriously taking off. It is getting more and more investors into it. And general aviation, which I suppose we could consider to be our local and regional type aircraft, are also starting to show serious areas of growth. So this is just something to bear in mind. So Boeing, see, now, when you talk about aircrafts, normally it is Airbus or Boeing. So Boeing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different demonstrators that they have. And they have from what they call the megawatt class all the way down to the kilowatt class of electric aircraft. And different aircraft for different applications. So Boeing is spending quite a bit of money on research and development where that is concerned. So again, if the major aircraft developers are looking at it and starting to develop it and get it ready for market, it shows that the potential is there. Hart Aerospace is one of them. You have WeFly, Wright, Spirit. They have electric aircraft and also one known as Airflow. And so you have most of these, but most of these are what is called regional flights. So they're smaller aircraft, they're not yet in the very large scale. But these are all being developed currently and are seeking various permits. I think that's what they call it, permitting, so that they can fly. Now, DHL, who we I hope I got it right. Where's DHL? Yes, DHL, who we invited to tonight's, the DHL Namibia, as part of the DHL Group. DHL itself in the US has started to look seriously at doing cargo flights with electric. And what it means is that they can move goods faster between points. They call them the points, between the points. And they can use these vehicles. And they've ordered 12 aircraft currently, known as the Alice, and we'll show you that later on. But what they said is, they can send the aircraft with a single pilot. They only need 30 minutes to charge this aircraft. It can then cover over 800 kilometers. So that's definitely beyond Drukfontein. I think that would probably take us to Oshakati, Angwediva, thereabouts. And they can carry 1.25 tons of cargo. So they can move that within that period of time. And I'm not so sure exactly the time it takes. So for example, if they cover that in 2 hours or what's the speed, because speed is also an important factor in terms of the amount of power you consume and also the weather conditions. But it's practically available. So they've ordered, which means it's available for order. And if we consider it in this way, DHL must be either considering to test the possibility of some cost saving that they're seeing, because I'm sure they're not doing it for altruistic reasons. There's other things they could do. They can do hydrogen trucking because they have trucking, they have other motion. But the fact that they've gone into looking at their aviation means that there is something there. And so I just want to hint you on that as well. Now, one of the other things that some of the sustainable fuels is providing is the ability for low noise operation within urban areas. And of course, currently, as I said, it's a lot of toys that look like it's for the rich and famous, like playthings. But if we really think of it, the possibility of me going to, or anybody for that matter, going to a meeting in Okahania or Rehoboth or Rental and being back in time in Windhoek because there is, you know, the availability or of mobility for you to do that would increase economic development. And that there is no two ways about it. And the point here then is that the aircrafts are starting to show up. And one of the credits that I will give to a lot of the developers of this type of aircraft is as they make mistakes, we learn. And I think that's one of the credits I would give to them. So as people are venturing in and they make mistakes, then they learn, and then that learning becomes something that we can enhance. Of course, there are players, and the player that I'm really interested in here is ABB. They have started to develop charging stations. Now, ABB is an engineering company, and they're interested in electrical systems. And if my memory serves right, most of Namibia's substations have ABB equipment inside them. And I can't remember what it stands for, something Bavaria, answer something Bavaria. It's a Swedish group. And so they understand electricity. And they are providing and starting to look at a lot of the charging points that we require. And if you remember earlier when I said about the amount of power, you have certain aircraft that are in kilowatt range, and you have certain that are in the megawatt range, which means they take a lot of energy for them to charge up, and you need, and it's serious equipment for you to do that. And for those in the renewable business who understand when you're operating at DC and all this sort of stuff, there's all this sort of equipment that's required and high amperage output. So they are literally preparing something for this, what is known as the DART, which is a trainer. And so a lot of the, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of the schools are now starting to use electric trainer aircraft. And I stand to be guided by this, but I understand they operate differently from, there's a different feel, because I understand electric cars also have a different feel from your internal combustion cars. For example, if you're somebody who normally would put your foot down, and then the car, you know, the engine takes in the fuel, then it burns it, then it shoots off. You try that with electric cars, you'd have crashed, because you've already shot across the street or wherever it is you're going, in terms of its response. So I understand electric aircraft is quite similar. So this is a good example of major players again being involved. And so the encouragement I'm trying to give here is that it is not something that is just mentioned by some, you know, I suppose crackheads who figure that we can do, but it is serious business that is going on, and they're major players. So now we're looking at hydrogen. So hydrogen, if we remember, is part of our Harambee Prosperity Plan 2. And Namibia is looking to be a major exporter of hydrogen by 2030. And if my memory serves me right, the plant in the south at least should commence construction by 2026, once they finish the feasibility studies and so on. So that there is an opportunity for us to also look in this area at what can be done. So here we are. So, General Electric, one of the major engine manufacturers, is looking seriously at how hydrogen burns, and that's the purpose of showing this, and a few others. And they have started to partner with Airbus. Now, for those who, I suppose, are into the politics, it's kind of a strange bedfellow arrangement. because GE is American and Airbus is European. And you'd have thought that they partnered with Boeing, but anyway, they partnered with Airbus. And so they're starting to look at how some of this will unfold. So GE's ambition is to be a net zero company by 2050, including what they call Scope 3, from the use of sold products. And they're also committed within their own facilities to look at Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. And so basically they're looking at burning hydrogen. Now the reason why I'm emphasizing this is that hydrogen can be used in hydrogen fuel cells to produce electricity, and hydrogen can be burned in a similar way that you burn gas, regular gas. And there are some developments that are currently looking at blending your liquid natural gas, or your natural gases, sorry, not liquid, but your natural gases with hydrogen, and kind of dose it in the same way that it used to happen with ethanol and petrol, where you have that dose. So there is that. And so they're basically looking at jet engine performance. GE is doing that, and seeing how the jet engines perform in terms of that. And so they have said that also, due to fuel cell specification, fuel cell technology is aimed at smaller aircraft. So an aircraft that, again, without, let's try going south this time, or maybe to Barbados or something like that. But if you want to be flying to Europe and to North America and to China and to India, places like that, then this is what they want to be able to do, to use these major jet engines that can burn this fuel. You also have a company called Zero Avia, which is a no-brainer, zero aviation, zero emission aviation, and they want to look at hybrid, so they want to mix hydrogen with electricity and have that possibility to improve emission performance. And so you have Airbus, and this is why I'm saying to you that most of the major manufacturers, I mentioned Boeing earlier, and here now is Airbus. And Airbus is also developing a number of sustainability aircraft, and they're looking at the turboprops, which is regional, I think those are what we call regional aircraft, and that's roughly about 100 passengers. And they're looking at doing 1,000 a range, that's their target, for something that would have been 1,000 nautical miles, which I think is about 1,200 kilometers. And they're also looking at doing the blended wing body. Now, the blended wing body is something that I suppose would still be on the drawing, because most blended wing aircraft, except for military operations, have come off the drawing board and ended up back on the drawing board, maybe in a down. And then they're looking at what is called turbofan. So from where I stand, not as any serious engineer or anything like that, I think that the top and the bottom ones may be the ones that come to us in the near future. And the blended wing may, if they get through, probably come at some other point. And they're looking at a variety of mixes. So they have not put their stake in the ground on one fuel type. They're looking at various blends and how they can get operational efficiency through that. So it leads me to the point of what next. So we've had the little talk, I've made you freeze yourself to death in here and everything else, and you've been bored by me. But what next? And so the point that we need to look at, and I think, is we can start to look at the ground infrastructure. What will our airports of the future look like? And I know I'm stepping into political territory when I say this, and I remember the president clearly saying in Dubai, looking me in the eye, and when he said it, and I remember I felt like he was talking to me, but he probably wasn't. He probably was looking past me. But I remember him saying clearly that politicians do political work and technocrats do technocrats. So I'm stepping kind of out of my technocratic role in saying that I think we were probably lucky when we didn't get our new airport, and there's a reason why I'm saying that. In that, when you look at the infrastructure that we required for the new fuels, my serious question is, did the current designs, because those designs must have come like 3 years back or something, at the time, which means they're probably like 5-6 years old now, have they taken into account any of this? And that's the point that I'm making. So I'm not trying to run for election or anything, I'm just making a point. That sometimes when you miss something, and you think, we should have had this. You're like, no, it's kind of good we didn't. You know, like you buy last year's version and this year has LED lights on it. Like, okay, yeah, you know. So it might be something along that lines. The other thing that I think needs to happen is that even though the mention was made recently, for example, about Otjiwarongo Aerodrome, and this I wish NCA was here, NAC, sorry, that they may need to start seriously looking at what happens if and remember we have tourism, nature environment and tourism. So we want to attract people. So I'm Richard, if I own my own aircraft, but my aircraft is hybrid, and I get to where you are and all you've got is dirty Jet A and A1, and sorry, not trying to be disrespectful to you, but that's what you've got. But my aircraft doesn't. So where do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to fly to the place that has it. So we need to start to talk about some of these things, and that's one of the areas that I just like to bring. That we need to start to say, okay, if this thing comes, what would our world look like? Yeah, remember how old you guys? For example, you guys now only go to Grove now. You don't bother go to Vernal anymore because there's nowhere to park your car and charge it. But Grove has it, so I'll go to Grove. And while I'm having my coffee, my car is charging. So I'll go to Grove. See? So there's an attraction, and it does that. Also, as I said, here's another thing, and forgive me, but as far as I know, this is Lufthansa. So they have, in whoever's ground handling it is, in Munich, they have electric togs, which means, and I'm sorry that it's not a room full of pilots, because they would just swallow this up immediately, but when they put fuel in an aircraft, they have to put fuel to move from one gate, I think, to the positioning point before they can get, to get to the runway. That's fuel. They're using fuel, and they have to take all of this into account. Now, and this was something that I remember Richard Branson speaking about. And by the way, these people are not my friends, eh? But I remember Richard Branson speaking about it, and they did a trial at Heathrow or Gatwick, one of the two that I think it was Gatwick. At Gatwick Airport, where they were using, at that time, they were using diesel togs, they call diesel togs, to move their aircraft, to position them to go take off. And they found that they were saving money because these were using less fuel than the aircraft would to push itself, to get itself to the gate. Now, can you imagine if we take that a step further and it's electric? So there are operational safety, and you reduce the emission at the same time. Because remember, it's sitting there, it's in an urban environment, getting ready to take off. So there are these benefits. But there's more. So I told you about the rich and their playthings. And so drone technology is kind of doing it, but I just want to say, are we ready? And that was the purpose of today's talk more than anything else. To say, look, the world as it is, this is where it is, and we would just like to know, are we ready? So, ladies and gentlemen, we're now moving to the question and answer. I'll hand over to Mr. Dongo. We will answer the questions, but I leave you with this video, which I did not pay me for. So are we ready to fly the future? Ladies and gentlemen, that's enough for me. It's over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jared. I'm about to come back up now. But we've come to our Q&A section. This is for any clarity, any questions, and just general discussion. So let me call back Mr. David.
I'll remember. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we're open for questions at this point in time. Please don't be shy. It's a small group, so I think we should be able to talk to each other. Sure.
I just wanted to find out that KT takeoff.
Yeah, sorry about that. it actually does take off, and they have utilized it. That's why DHL has ordered 12. And they're saying that they can do, for example, the London to Paris route with that aircraft work. It only, people know another current. It only at the moment is designed for 9 passengers. So I don't know what the cost structure is, and I'm not here, I'm not a salesman for them. They've not endorsed anything. This is what we found from the public. It's all available online. And if you notice, we put the links on every single page that we've done. So you can go back and see the material. But to answer your question, the plane did take off, and it has flown, and I understand that it's getting its ratings or whatever. I need people who understand this, but the aircraft has to get a rating or something, like it gets permits. Certification, that's the word. See, there's more intelligent people than me. Yeah, so it's just waiting on certification, and I understand that it's pretty close to getting.
While I have the mic as well, just another one, especially in terms of carbon reduction and all these international associations that we party to. I just wanted to always make sure that we don't sign ourselves up to requirements, expectations of developed nations being a developing country. Just to ensure that we give them time and space to utilize the technologies, equipment that we have, resources that we have to develop as well, and not to necessarily always restrict ourselves to the numbers that they give out there based on the emissions that they have, because obviously they're far developed than us. So just to get that.
Sure. One of the things I will say that, and I'm not trying to speak on the NCAA's behalf, but that was pointed out in this week. Namibia, for example, there's that logic table that I showed. So, for example, we don't, as far as I know, have any registered aircraft that is over 10,000 tons. So that's the first thing. So already we don't need to comply. But our operator, for example, Fly Namibia, or West Air, whoever it is, has already voluntarily started providing the information that they require and trying to comply. So that's one good start. And please remember, we're not an island. But I heard that quite recently, and I think it was a presidential spokesman, and he was saying Namibia is not an island. And so you have to understand, we're dealing with aviation. We don't manufacture anything, we don't whatever it is. So we're not an island, we will have to get parts, we will have to do a lot of things. We interact with the world outside. But there are certain things that we do not have to do that would be the same as other countries, like for example, European, with the European trading scheme and all these things, and the American compliance. We don't have to comply with all of that at the moment. But we do need to, under the Corsair scheme, I think, by 2027, start at least reporting what is happening. So we can probably still be going ahead, using our fuel, doing whatever it is. But I think there is an opportunity from a personal standpoint, so I can only speak personally, that there's an opportunity for us to try and get ahead of the curve. And when I was mentioning earlier about the renewable energy industry that you're part of, I remember when, and it's funny because I was at the inauguration, and I was reminding someone, for those of you that don't know, I used to be responsible for providing technical advice at NAMCO for renewable energy. And I remember being in a meeting with someone who will remain here. And they said, not only that dead body, this thing was foolishness. And the person was there at the inauguration of probably the 24th plant. So that person died 24th times. So the possibility is for us to get ahead of the curve and not have to play catch up. That for me is crucial. And I say it from a personal perspective, because I don't control policy, I don't control it.
I've seen a lot of hands for this gentleman did have his hand up first.
Thank you. I'm not an aviation expert.
Oh, by the way, guys, can you introduce yourselves? At least let us leave here as friends.
All right. My name is Velem Salomo. I'm from Jumbo Logistics, but at the same time, I studied logistics and supply chain in honest. As I'm saying, I'm not the aviation expert.
Yes.
When I started supply chain, you always keep in mind business, economy, and the movement of products. And I think, like currently, we are taught to school that aviation or the aviation mode of transport is the most expensive one and so forth. So I just want to find out if maybe will this development also help businesses to transport their goods, maybe at a cheaper price or at a cheaper rate, and since we are now reducing also on what is it? Can I call it fuel?
Emissions. Let's just call it emissions.
Yes. So will this also help businesses to transport goods at a cheaper price, since now we are moving to this? And for Namibia especially, I also want to speak on infrastructure. You added on infrastructure, but it was general. But I just want to say, it's not a blame to say that I'm blaming one, but what are some of the advice that you also give to the Ministry of Works and Transport in connection to developing these infrastructures for us to be ready, even for DHL? We have DHL in Namibia, and they are ordering also those airplanes. Can they also operate in Namibia, or at what rate will DHL able to operate in Namibia with that mode of transport?
I can see he doesn't talk to old people enough. He mustn't give old people too many questions. Let me take the last one that I remember, and then you can remind me of the first one. So, in terms of cost, and I hope that's not the first, but in terms of cost, cost is always related to the economy of scale. So if you get somebody ordering 50 or 100 of those aircraft, it'll be cheaper than somebody orders one. I can promise you that, because they now have the power of purchasing power and so forth. The other thing that is that if you remember, one of the key components why they used to say that aircraft was expensive in terms of the logistics was the fact that you have all of the different fees and you know the weight restriction. So when you can put 1,000 tons on a ship and it just chugs along, takes 3 weeks, the aircraft is going to burn a lot of fuel trying to get itself off the ground, which is not what God intended for a hunk of metal to do, but to get off the ground, fly through the air, and then get to the other part. Now it'll get there quickly, but it'll be expensive. But here's the irony. I was reading an article, and yeah, I do sleep, but I was reading an article, and in one of the statements the guys made is that the Antonov aircraft, I don't know if you're aware of that massive aircraft that came here with supplies sometime during the COVID. Yeah, but that Russian. It's Ukrainian, but it's a Russian design. So that's the irony. So the Antonov aircraft, one of the first things that happened is that I think there's 2 of them parked somewhere in Ukraine, and they were blown up. And his comment was that come Christmas time, that was how they moved something like 1.3 million plastic Christmas trees from China to Canada. And he said he doesn't know what they're going to do this year, because the aircrafts are not up, they've blown them up. So it flies in the face of the logic of it being expensive. I think some things are expedient, and so if people need it and it works well, and please remember we have currently there's a company called Zipline that uses drones to move medicine in Malawi, and I think some in Uganda. I think they have 2 or Rwanda. They have like 2 or 3 countries that they use it. But the point I'm trying to make is aircraft will become viable for logistics when people find it fit to do that, and people are willing to pay the price for it. So I don't want to say it's cheaper, and I don't want to say it is cheap, but I think the more you use something, it tends to become cheaper over time. And so if we can again get ahead of the curve, I think we could have the possibility to move cargo, light cargo, I'm not saying heavy cargo, fast and quickly. Medication, whatever it is, you can come for services and whatever across the country by using some form of sustainable aviation. I'm not talking electric, I'm not talking hydrogen, I'm not talking sustainable aviation fuels. Right? I'm just saying that that is a possibility. And there is also one other point I'd like to leave you with in terms of the fact that economy of scale will always dictate price. Always. And so if people are because of all of the licensing that you need, I can personally go out and buy myself one of these long trails. And by the way, I have to see money. So I can go drive it myself. I don't need a driver. But I promise you I'll never be able to make it to the airport unless I'm going to ride on somebody else's plane. Because I'm not a pilot, and I don't think I'll ever to be afford to become a pilot. Maybe I'm even too old for that. You understand? So these are some of the things that are, there's barriers to entry for things like that. Yeah? And what was your other question? Sorry. Or did I answer them in my rambling way?
But you answered the question, the second mention was what was...
Oh, about the infrastructure. Yeah, one of the things about infrastructure, so for example, we are advisors, that's our general role. So advisors across the energy and sustainability space. And so it is not our place to go and tell anybody what to do. It is for us to say, here are the circumstances, here are your options, now choose. Once they've chosen, it's done. And so one of the things that we'd like to see as a company is, for example, electrical charging. And I'm not trying to be your best friend tonight, but I know we're friends. I'm not trying. I'm just saying that I mentioned, for example, you should be able to drive from the north here electrically. And you should be able to pop into a petrol station in the same way that I can do with a diesel or a petrol. Sorry? Yeah, but I'm saying it's not there yet. So I'm saying, and it's not in the law. So I can go and build a petrol station and don't put a charging point. But there will be diesel and there will be petrol. You get where I'm going with this? So in terms of the airport, I think that there is room for that discussion, but they need to talk to the industry players, because if they don't want it, what's the point? So somebody in the industry has to give that signal. So I don't think it's right for us to go and say, go put electric charging there for an aircraft. And the question then would be, which aircraft? What size is it? What voltage? What does a connector look like? Because I think there are like 3 different connectors for electric cars globally. Trust me. All right, that's 2. So it's not 1. Yeah, okay. We still have that discussion about diesel in Angola different from diesel in Namibia. So these are relevant points that have to be worked through. So it's not just, but I do agree with you that infrastructure needs to be future-proof. So whatever you're doing, leave some space for some adjustment based on what you need. Yeah? Sorry, David, I mean, I have to give the youngsters, so it doesn't look like all people is. No, I wanted to respond to his statement.
Yeah, please. The statement of the, because I did logistics.
Everybody else stop so they can hear you this time. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer this question. I wanted to respond to Galen's question because I did logistics, and I don't know if you have reached this curriculum of efficiency and effectiveness. So when you are choosing modes of transport, like now you are saying that you want aviation to be cheaper, which it cannot really necessarily be cheaper because aviation is airplanes and things. So in logistics, when you are choosing a mode of transport, you have to look at efficiency and effectiveness. So for aviation, it's basically just for speed. If you want goods to arrive early, then you go for aviation because it's effective and it's efficient. For example, if newspapers, for example, they have to be delivered and produced here in Windhoek, they have to go to the north, they have to reach there early. And maybe to choose the most efficient and effective mode of transport, you have to choose aviation. If you choose road, for example, and they are received late, then people will be receiving newspapers at 10, that would be late. So to be efficient, you have to choose the most effective and efficient mode of transport, which will be aviation, which is speed.
Yeah. That's it. And just just to add on to that, because you raised that point. If you think about it, the flower industry in East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and so on, depends on flying those flowers to Europe daily. They're not trucked there, they're not shipped, because I know there wouldn't be, those flowers would not be of no use to anybody. So the point he's making about it being efficient, it has to be related to what it is. And that's why I was saying that the possibility of like people needing medical care, moving drugs, and I'm not a drug person, but moving drugs, whatever it is one of the important factors. Now, if I just want to send the 2 kilos of my hand to somebody to test at some point and do something, I'm just trying to say it's not important. I wouldn't send that by aircraft. I'd send that by EM's transport or somebody who's going wherever I need that to go. You understand? I'd send that by road. So these are the sort of things. Yeah. Harold, sorry.
Yeah, okay. My name is Harold Schütz, and the first question I have to the organizers is whether you're prepared to add to the letters Q and A 2 more letters like D and I, discussion and information. If you're prepared to do so, then I can say what I'm planning to say.
But that's definitely all it is, because at this point, we would like to focus it still on the aviation industry and its potential in terms of becoming more sustainable and some of what is out there. Because Harold, I know you long enough, we're good friends, and I know you long enough, and so I don't want the discussion to go sideways into a more general sustainable discussion, even though I've been teasing about your car and charging it and whatever it is. But I was trying to make a point in comparison to aviation. But go ahead, Harold. I'll give you some leeway.
I will be very brief. The first one, I thought it is interesting to say I drove here with my electric car at a cost of 20 Namibian cents per kilometer if I would buy the electricity. I'm making my own electricity, so it's a different price, but my cost was 20 Namibian cents per kilometer. Had I used my other car, I still have an internal combustion engine, I would have used $2.50 in fuel alone.
Yeah, that's what I paid for last week.
Yes, just
$2.50.
The running cost of the other car is around about $5 per kilometer. Total running cost by electric car, maybe 60 cents or something like 50 cents, something like that. If you take all the costs, you know.
Yeah.
So, just to say, these are the cost ratios we're talking about. The second point is, I'm working on a plan to make the entire Namibia a totally sustainable destination, meaning that your aircraft and your cars would be run on plant oil. Your flight, if possible, would be done electrical. Your food would be cooked in a solar cooker. Your water would be heated with solar energy, and so on and so on. So, it is very near, and I think aviation is an important part of it. The last point I wanted to make, yes, Sir Branson ran one of his big aircraft 25% on plant oil. And when we don't talk about different fuels and the cost of it, it is not just only a cost question in terms of numbers, how much is there. It's also a question of who gets the money. And that's what I would like to be part of this discussion. Hydrogen is such a sophisticated and also dangerous substance that it needs to be monopolized. That means we would feed a lot of money into the pockets of the monopolies because they would make a profit. If you would go more in the direction of plant oil, then people in the north can, plant oil left, right, and center, there's space enough, and a lot of that money would go there. And I think it has to be part of this discussion. I mean, those existing airplanes, and I'm delighted to know how many we have, they could all, to a degree, I don't know to which degree, but to a certain degree, could be run by plant oil, which we could produce ourselves, and which we could pay people in the north for to produce.
I will answer your last statement by saying this. You're on the right track about the plant oil, because as far as I understand it, forms part of the sustainable aviation fuel. And as I pointed out, the transport industry is saying the bulk of what they want to see coming by 2050, they want to see that as Jet A or Jet A1 fuel. And so the plant oil, as far as I know, is within that line. It can be utilized for that. But where some of the complexities come in, and this was a point I made earlier, so I'm going to make it again so I'm not a hypocrite. Namibia's landscape is such that at the moment we are still importing food. And so the question is, do you plant something just for energy so you can have it and it's that, and then you're starving? Or do we focus on the food portion first and then focus on some of the other things? Because one of the possibilities is to use what is called the waste from food production systems to be used for fuel. And that's also a possibility. And we have to be careful. And I want to make a reference, but it's going to seem like I don't understand drugs. But there has been a situation where many farmers will grow non-food consuming products once they realize there's more money to be gained from certain other products. And so what you could end up with is some form of competitive system that is disruptive to life. And so there is a potential to do that. And I do know that in certain farming schemes, for example, if you're planting maize, that's, sorry, people where I come from, we're used to the maize more than that. You're planting maize, it's possible also to plant peanuts and something else, because they grow faster, and they also provide nitrogen to the corn. So you reap that, and then the corn is there, then you reap the corn. And I'm saying there's a possibility for you to have like this mixed use of land that could possibly do that. There is a possibility also to work on some of the systems we have to collect garbage and have it separated, so some of the plastics could go into some of that, along with some of the biofuels, and then the combination of these things thereof. So there is a possibility, and so it's laudable that we do that. And there is room also for what you were just pointing out, that we have these complete value chains that look at everything. So when you get here on a sustainable aircraft, but then you jump in a diesel truck to drive around Sussex Play or whatever it is, it kind of doesn't make any sense. When the sun, and then what's even worse, you then start with a diesel generator to make you stay cool, when you could have used solar panels. It kind of doesn't make sense. And then you start with another diesel generator so you can boil water or heat water so you can bathe and wash plates. Again, it doesn't make any sense. So yeah. Okay.
That was as far as the letter T for discussion was concerned. Just for the letter I of information, tomorrow at 5:30 is a presentation on hydrogen hyphen at the Opera House at the Village Complex. For those who work, 5:30 to 8:30 you will work.
And thanks for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first.
Please do raise your hand for questions.
Please do raise your voice when you speak.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jared. It's my father. So, with regards to sustainable aviation, e-commerce has become a very big thing, especially with regards to COVID. People not being able to go out to buy goods, and with the boom of Amazon. So, but a big issue that I've personally seen that a lot of people complain about is like, if you want to order from Amazon, for example, in Namibia, the shipping fee is more expensive than the product that you're buying. So it doesn't make sense to buy from Amazon. And, we live in a world where everything is based on consumerism and instant gratification. So the increase of e-commerce is only going to increase as the years go on. So personally, just a comment, not really a question. I think that sustainable aviation is it's needed because transport of goods is just going to increase. I think Namibia should really be ready for that because what is that thing that we had? Order with me. Order with me is only going to increase. So
and so is Java, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. So DHL, if they are buying electric powered planes, is Namibia going to be ready to receive goods that are coming in with those planes? So yeah, that's all I have to say.
We'll probably swap them in Joe Bergen and bring them tradition.
Good evening. My name is Lucius. I'm here in my private capacity, but I work for the Office of the Prime Minister, and I'm not a guru in innovation, but we have a public sector innovation policy, and it is expected that the whole public sector, including public enterprises, come up with new ideas, thinking out of the box to deliver services. I'm just putting it out there. Now, with regard to, we are more careful when it comes to doing things, yet we had COVID in Wuhan, and it killed a couple of thousands of people in Namibia. Now, when we talk of globalization, even of diseases, then we must play catch up in every area, because we have signed the African Free Trade Area. We have Vision 2030 that says we should be on par with the developed world within 8 years or 7 years. So we cannot be too careful, because if anyone from any corner of the world comes to Namibia and come up with something that is revolutionary, then we will be left behind. So I think that is the challenge for our country. I wanted to ask, maybe in the future you will have a talk on the role of drones and service delivery, because you mentioned Rwanda and Malawi, yet we have legal restrictions when it comes to using drones in the country. And what is your advice to those regulatory authorities that are restricting?
Sorry, I'm laughing because George, you're asking me to talk in George's capacity.
That are restrictive, because I understand within the security establishment there are very serious restrictions when it comes to the use of drones. Why this could be the modes of delivery to hard to reach areas, and that's why we are sharing the joke about drones. Ukraine challenging a superpower through drones, and what wonders could these drones produce if we use for peaceful purposes? And I wanted to also hear about maybe in your future talk about self-driving planes. Maybe you would enlighten us about that. I'm mesmerized by the research you have conducted and the talk. I'm not an expert, I'm just a bureaucrat trying to learn how to change the government system in an innovative way. But what you did to me now, you opened my mind to possibilities. Well done.
Thank you. See, you made me so glad I forgot what I was supposed to say. Yeah, but thank you very much for that. And one of the things that we'll do is that, again, I must speak personally. I still believe that there is room for job creation, and there's various ways that you can have job creation. So I'm not a big fan of unmanned vehicles. I'm not a big fan of it. But when you think of the aviation sector, and I did mention it here, weight is an important factor. So if you can do without the weight of the operator inside the vehicle that needs to take off, you can actually lift more load and do more delivery on the other end. So in terms of unmanned, and forgive me, unwomaned aviation vehicles or unpersoned vehicles, we do have a role for it in a country like Namibia, where we're sparse and we're spread around, and we could be able to get services to places. So that's something. Now, in terms of the civil aviation regulations, personally, again, again, I have looked at the drone regulation. I own a drone. It's not registered, so it's just sitting on. Where's Olga? Yeah, it's just sitting in a cupboard in our office because we don't fly it unless we go deep, deep rural where we're away from anybody at all, and we'll probably just use it very quickly for like 10, 15 minutes, and then we park it. That's it. We're done with it. But we try not to use it anywhere near any airports, which is one of the standard regulations, and we do understand that, and we definitely try not to use it in the urban area, which is unfortunate. And also in terms of the cost, and this is the point I was trying to make to you earlier as well, in terms of the cost for registration, you need to be using that drone area. You can't just have it. It's not something you can just have. You need to be using it, and it needs to be repaying that fund. Because I think it's something like $16,000 or something just for the registration form and what and all of that. So it's very restricted. But there is room for drone technology in Namibia that would help us with certain service delivery, things that we need to do. I think there's even a room for it in terms of national security. And I do remember that USAID, I think, provided, yes, it was USAID, that provided some drones to NAMPOL, Namibian police, in terms of to help with security. And it's a lot cheaper than using helicopters. So it is something that can be. Now, in terms of our future talks, we do want to collaborate, and so we're willing to collaborate with various entities, so you can reach out to us. And what we're hoping to do more than anything else is to provide thought leadership. So we want to be looking at, we don't want to be discussing things that in essence are a policy matter, but more looking at, okay, if this was to change. So, for example, I hear Bill Gates get a lot of stick because he says, oh, we must be ready for the next disease. People say, oh, so you're planning to give us another disease? No, we just need to be ready. What would we do if COVID came back in a more virulent form and was more dangerous than it was before? Somebody decided to weaponize it. Are we ready? Have we thought about that? And it's not that you're as they say, I receive. So it's not like I'm planning for this day and I'm ready for it to come, but that we're also trying to fix this. So our next set of talks in particular will not focus on government service delivery as such, but more on what could be done to enhance service delivery. And so we're planning to have at least one talk every 2 months. And the team, and I just asked this afternoon, the team said, survey, get us through this one, we will talk about the others. And so primarily, and as you can see, and by the way, I'd love if my team stood up, and I apologize, I should have done this earlier. I'd love if my team came forward and waved your hands. Let the people can see you. Stand up. David. Now because you spoke. And the reason why I did this is you can see that we have a very young team. And so it is one that we have to make sure that they're comfortable in public speaking, because there's no point in coming, it's just me. Then it's not about me. And I said this to them, this is not about me. Give them the opportunity to let them talk. I didn't disrupt, I didn't say, no, you got that wrong. Like, no, talk. And they will develop. And after a while, I'm like, I should probably say this different, I'll probably next time. And they'll get over the nervousness at some point and whatever it is, and they'll learn. So our next set of topics, and I'm saying that in relation to that, our next set of topics will be something that they will sit down and we'll come together and we'll agree on and we'll move it forward. Our magazine publication, which is really run through RDJ Publishing, Madame? Yeah, through RDJ Publishing and the RDJ Publishing team, because I'm from the consulting side of things. So they have already provided a list of things. So if you heard me talk earlier, I said recycling will be next month. Right, so they did endangered fishing species, now it's recycling, then there's another topic, I think it's tourism and so on. So they're looking at, and then there's mining and whatever. So they've got various topics. Now we need to stick with topics that are either in advance of their topics so that it feeds into the magazine, or something that's more topical, of public discourse, without touching on government policy and that sort of stuff. Because we're not in competition with government, and it's something that I say all the time. We're not in any fight with government. We deal strictly in facts. We're not driven by news, so we're not reporting news to you. We're saying these are the facts, the things are there. These are some of the things we need to think about, and these are the things that would probably make our life better if we could move forward with it. So I hope I've kind of answered your question. But please feel free to reach out to us and say, this is a topic, what do you think? Do you think it's something that can be a public discussion, and we're willing to work with it?
No, I'm not an expert, so...
No, I know, I'm saying we're willing to do the research. Okay. So maybe I need to make it clearer. We do research for facts, present it, and then you can have your public talk, and your public is more aware of what the situation is, and that's what we're driving. Okay. Yeah. So that's where we're at. Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. My name is Hello Etwawe. I spent probably too many years of my working career in aviation, commercial aviation for that matter. I would want to understand your position with regards to this talk. What is the expected outcome of that? When we are done, what is your expected outcome? Is it to influence someone somewhere at a decision-making level? Then it becomes nice to participate. Then we become factual to influence someone to see that the challenges that are there is attended to.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
I can carry on.
No, please don't, because my agent stage, it's nice for me to respond.
I think I'm older than you.
It's nice for me to have a dialogue.
Okay.
My mind space is up. Cool. So our intention here is for public awareness. We have no other intention than for public awareness and to make the public aware of what is there. Because as I said, coming from my personal experience, and again, these guys and I are kind of in the same sector. So we are aware of what happens when people don't get to understand something because they don't get all the facts. You just hear from someone, oh, I had a bad experience, someone said, I had a good experience. Oh, that one was lying, this one. No, here are the facts. Now you can go read and you can decide for yourself. Also, here is the reality. The reality is, if somebody else does this tomorrow, as was pointed out a while ago, so if other countries around us start developing and looking at things, but we're saying, no, we're not ready for that yet, what will happen to us? Because then nobody can come to us. And as I pointed out earlier, if you have somebody from the rich and playful group that decided they're going to go buy these expensive whatever it is, but they can't come where you are, then they won't come. And remember, this is somebody, remember you said you want jobs, you want economic development, you want to move your country forward, you want a future vision. Your future vision must ask yourself, what will the connected world want from you? That's why we have 4G, we have 5G we're looking for now. Right? We have LTE, sorry, forgive me. We have LTE, we have this, we have that. And so it's along that line. So the other thing too is remember that part of our group is a publishing group. So we can take material that we have and now it will be published. So it will be there in the public sphere for people to see, read, respond to in whatever way they want. So that is it. Now, we are engaging government, so Ministry of Environment, we have engaged Ministry of Environment, for example, Ministry of Mines and Energy just left. So we're engaging the various ministries in terms of what we're doing. We publicly announced this. If you notice, it was free entry. And we are doing it from that perspective as more of a public information session on what is possible. Not about, we're not complaining, oh, we're here talking tonight about Eros or what. We're here saying, look, this is what is happening in the world around us, what next? So that's our intention. We have no other intention.
No, I got it. But can I plead with you to differentiate on this one, an exception perhaps, seeing that we have got my colleague from the NCAA, that this is a very interesting topic, and it's my first review. But I enjoyed the presentation a great deal. At the same time, I saw the gaps that exist from where Namibia currently is versus to where the industry aims to be. And saying that, I'm happy that the colleague from Lufthansa is here, to the effect that if we don't come on board with this, we'll get left behind. And the tendency that I know from the African aviation concept versus the European or from the States is that Africa is becoming a dumping ground for disregarded or written off aircraft. Yes, there is a aircraft graveyard up in the States, but we are becoming a dumping ground for unwanted aeroplanes. Aeroplanes not certifiable in Europe operates in Africa. It's to do mostly with heavy pollutions. It pollutes water, it pollutes everything in the environments they operate. Therefore, I would plead with you that if we could perhaps engage at a different level to get the necessary attention to the decision makers. Because my colleague here, George, is in the overseeing part of what ICAO would recommend. And that recommendation would come at the bare bottom minimum of the prescribed attitudes. And then it depends per country, do they will or do they have got the will to do more than the bare bottom minimum that is prescribed, or do they go by the bare bottom minimum as per prescribed attitudes? But we cannot lag behind on this one, particularly in the sense that we are now talking about hydrogens, the Harambee Prosperity Plan parts of and the discovery of the potential fuel products that we are sitting with. Maybe even to the extent that we can engage those colleagues in petroleum engineering to find ways and means that how do we do research that the current petroleum products, F-gas, is not the desired one, but the jet ones are the desired one. That we can influence and improve on that one inside Namibia, and it becomes an export material to the rest of the world. Then we talk business. That is what I would want us to do, and that is why I would plead with you that maybe we can upscale this discussion with a different expected outcome. An outcome that takes Namibia commercially elsewhere in areas where Africa, they had no trade.
Thank you, sir. If I may. This is precisely what we wanted to do, and so your response is a positive response, and it was triggered and initiated by what we did. And so we got the response we wanted, which is public awareness and say, maybe this now needs to be discussed with these, and so on and so forth. But one of the things I must caution is to say that, one, we are private sector, and because we are an advisory group, we don't sell anything other than advertising space, I suppose, or consultancy and advisory services. So we're not selling products. So this thing about value add is something that an entrepreneur or such lobbying individuals could pull together the people that could say, hey, hold on a second. You say we found the oil. It's not just the oil and we send it away or we get back some diesel. What about us blending it, as I mentioned earlier, with hydrogen and something like that, and we can use it, or some reformation, and we start to, so that when we can become that central hub. And so I'm more than willing to have that discussion, and I'm sure my team will back me on this, that we're willing to have the discussion with others to say, okay, here are some of the possibilities. But one of the things that I'm struggling, and I must say this is now very personal within me, I'm struggling to go and confront and say, guys, you need to do this better, because one thing that I've noticed, people don't want to hear that. And if you want a door closed on me, as a private sector individual, just go saying, we know better than you. The door will be closed immediately. And so I'm saying, if for example, George is here, and if George was to say, would you guys, the presentation that you did, we came we will keynote address, but would you have the courtesy of even having that discussion with our board? That's something we're willing to do. But to go and say to them, okay, we will tell you how this is done, I don't think that conversation would work in the way that it is. But I'm happy, and maybe I'm overstepping my bounds, but George and I have had this discussion this evening about having further collaboration and discussions with NCAA. So that I'm happy to say. And as I have said to the colleague from the OPM, I'm saying if there is some open door that you guys decide, please reach out to us. Because our job is to do research, provide facts, provide the information, put it in the, let's face it, if you look inside this document, you will not find neither bank Windhoek, and sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned the name, but you won't find a bank, you won't find a ministry, you won't find anybody. There are two entities that are inside here, and they are not endorsing the document, but they have given us permission for information that's in there, and that's the Civil Aviation Authority and the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. So we have taken the time to not just be standing here and just trying to say things, but to make sure that the documentation that we present has gone to the highest level, because we have had direct contact with the International Civil Aviation Organization on this. So we can just come here and like, oh, this was on Google. No, we've looked and we've said, and we've provided it that it's open now for the public. So this is free to be distributed. It has no price tag on it, nothing else. The only thing we ask is that we have a conversation. And so the point you're making, I'm happy about it. It is one that is well received, and we will continue to do what we do. And I hope that's a reasonable answer to it. And George is right, and George is right there, and I'm saying, I said something a while ago, and if I was trying to be funny or telling a lie, I'm sure George would be like, nah, this is it. Because George would be on the line.
I'm okay with your answer. I just then need to rephrase my take on that. That I would then direct my request to my countrymen from the TM's office and then to George, that we can then, or they can then initiate from their part to involve you on a further discussion where maybe it's on a entry level with them on one-on-one or as a grouping, and then upscale it to the decision making, because we cannot afford also to stay behind or lag on this one. Opportunities comes, opportunities goes, but the opportunity lost is lost.
Yeah.
We cannot afford to lose this one.
But I'd also, just quickly before you say something to us, I'd just like to say that the whole time, and they have not endorsed the event, and so what we're saying, we're not saying that they agree with everything, but they have constantly kept us up to date with what they are doing. And throughout the whole discussion, there has been a whole flurry of information, backwards and forwards between us, and so I'm saying there is room for that discussion, and we're willing to have that. But George, go ahead.
So take it.
Thank you very much. It seems like that I have been put in a position where I have to say something. But what I would like to do is I would like to thank the RDJ Publishing or the group for the opportunity that they have, or the platform that they have created for this discussion to go through or be made available to grassroots levels, and we really appreciate that because that is what any citizen should be doing, to inform each other on what is available. And as I've mentioned to you, we are busy with this. We have started already with some kind of road work, and we are going to go in next or towards the end of the year to the coast, and then we have some of these discussions planned where we are going to have the stakeholder engagement as well as the general public. And obviously to highlight what aviation is all about and how we all can benefit from it. Because aviation, as much as we think, is not only meant for the rich and the wealthy, but it is for everybody, because as we can see, the biggest GDP that we get from in our industries, in our private sector, is tourism, and that is from and made possible through aviation. So even the child that is sitting at a village somewhere is obviously benefiting from it, even though he might not even know or have entered the aircraft itself. So whatever income we generate from these industries are plowed back into everybody. And it is good for us to know that there are options out there and there are means that we can address the emissions that are created, because at the end of the day, what we are developing right now is going to have an impact on our future generations. So these are the things that we have to look at and we, as what we are having right now, is the discussions that we have to have. One of the questions that was asked is about drones, for instance. You know, ICAO is sitting with the International Civil Aviation Authority, is sitting with a headache, because these things have just sprang up just as a surprise to all of us, and it's developing at a very, very, very fast rate. You have a 10-year-old sitting in his living room and can operate these things, and they can cause so much damage to what we already have and what we can determine as a conventional industry. So we have to protect that industry, as well as to look at this industry, how it can penetrate the market and then be viable at the end of the day. So for us to come back with all these things, it takes years, and it takes a lot of background work that we need to do to make sure that it is done correctly. And what I can say is there are model regulations that have been set up by ICAO in various states and by FAA. However, these are being contextualized into what is currently on the ground. So I believe that end of this year, ICAO is going to come up with something tangible that each state is going to use. And there are platforms that we are utilizing. What you have asked is, we have AFCAC, for instance, WACAF. Those are all organs that we as Africans are using and discussing and are to sort of like making sure that we are abreast with what is internationally happening. And I think towards the end of this year, the ICAO plenary is going to take place, where we are going to sit as international organizations from all over the world and are going to discuss issues pertaining to aviation. So there are platforms that we are discussing this, and we are in contact, as I've mentioned, we are in contact with ministries, we are in contact with various organizations. Airports company, who is also represented here, I believe, is also our partners. So we are in contact and we are constantly discussing these issues. So we really appreciate the effort that is put by organizations like this ones, but we are discussing these issues. So if anybody is out there and feels like in that we can share this information, our offices are open and we are always eager to listen to anybody, and we are always keen to address and to advise anybody that is looking for information. And that you can quote me on as the Senior Manager of Safety and or Acting Senior Manager of Safety, and also General Manager of Safety and the Senior Manager of Safety Promotion and Quality, which is my substantive position. So you can quote me on that. So I can vouch that the Namibia Civil Aviation Authority stands by words that we are available anytime. You can call us or you can contact us. We will make use of our experts and provide the necessary information to anybody and everybody that wants this information to be made relevant to their institutions. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a man a round of applause. Because he did not come here to do beyond the keynote address, but thank you for that. And I can confirm what he's saying, in the sense that our engagement with the NCAA has been outstanding. And we have that with other Namibian agencies. Although we do have a similar thing with Ministry of Environment, Forestry, Tourism, and also Ministry of Mines and Energy. But if we had it across the board and so on, I think it would be brilliant. Thank you for that. So sir, your questions have been answered from 2 points. And as I said, that we have offered each other the chance for collaboration and to work together, and we're offering it across the board here today. Next question?
I just want to say, if that's okay with my boss, Mr. Jarrett, we are 20 minutes over time.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
And that is awesome. We really appreciate the feedback, but I just want to know
What's
Want
next?
to wrap it up for
Okay. Somebody's getting quiet. Sorry. Yes, sir. There's one gentleman.
No, I just wanted to mention my name. I just wanted to mention my name is Mark Carson. Unfortunately, I just got the message on my phone that this thing is already running hour. My apologies for turning up late. I am with the Namibia Airports Company, and some of the discussions that came through, of course, will be taken through to the organization. It is true that the discussions of this nature requires all the players, NCAA, Airports Company, and what my senior has mentioned. I also wanted to just add, once the end of the year, November, we are busy organizing what is called aviation in Durban. And I think we are looking for speakers, and one of them I've just discovered by just being here. And of course, I'll make sure that the organizers reach out to you and you come and have this some thoughts with us and of course the rest of the Namibian side. Yeah. So I just wanted to announce myself that NAC is also here.
Thank you. All right. Yes. With the point that we need to wrap up. That's my brain. The whole thing about it, as I said, is that we are happy to engage with the agencies, and because our whole remit is just to do the research, pull the information together, so that when we advise knowing what is out there, and we're not doing some of the narrow view that we see taking place some of the times, and without taking too many shots of that. Now, one of the things that we will definitely want to do going forward is to ensure that we have everybody's details, that we can send the presentation or give you at least a link to it so that it can be shared. And I'd also like to just remind the agencies, so for example, like NCAA, NAC, and so forth, OPM, that we also do courtesy visits where we come in and introduce who we are, introduce the magazines, the topics covered, and so on and so forth. And from time to time, we will want to interview people from your agency, for example, like leading members of the industry and so on. We do that. So we will be in touch, definitely, and we thank you for that. So in terms of a summary and closing remark, it's fine. I will just continue to abuse the privilege given to me by the virtue of the bank. Sorry. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to first and foremost thank you for being here, and especially the fact that we're here longer than the time we were planning to be, and people have kept their seats. I don't see people like itching and whatever, and we have been engaging each other. I think the right group is in the room, and the right set of people. Not people who just came because they didn't have anything better to do. I'm glad it's not a Friday night. And also, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate the questions that were asked, because it also leads our research to be better when we move forward, because we now get some of the wider, and it gives us a feel. And so please feel free to take not only a copy for yourself of tonight's agenda and documentation, but please feel free to do that. Ensure again, as I said, that we have your details, that we'll be able to send something out. And I think you should give yourselves a round of applause, because you've been brilliant. And so here are our details if you need to by any chance, but it will be on the documentation we have. But I'd like to thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.